so when he's talking about the United States potentially being the largest Ponzi scheme, it's like they're just doing it on a global scale using countries instead of people.
Yeah.
Biggs and Bond.
All right, let's get it going. Hey guys, welcome back to your feature channel, Biggs and Boggs. I'm Marty Boggs.
And I'm Julie Mix.
We don't have Spencer on sound screens today, but we are still going to come at you like once a week or so and talk about some subjects that we do believe will benefit your future hand, comb through this transitioning world of finance, and yeah, try and help you along the way with maybe a couple jokes and stuff, just entertainment. But what are we up to today, and how can we plan for tomorrow, Julie?
I did anyway. So today we're going to look back in history. We're going to go over what a Ponzi scheme is today and where it originated and how it kind of intertwines with today's digital world of finance and connects to the SBF scandal and Ponzi, as they would call it again too. So yeah, let's get right into it and see what's going on. We are still kind of related to finance here, but we're going to do it a little differently.
This video was brought up by Julian. I haven't actually watched it, so let's see.
So yeah, last week we watched Dinklage, Jick.
Something like that. This is the largest Ponzi schemes in history. We're not going to go through this whole video, but we're just going to start talking about it as we go here. So let's get right into it.
This is, kind of a brief overview.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
This video was brought to you by Raycon. Hi, welcome to another episode of Cold Fusion. We've all seen and read reports of Ponzi scheme scandals getting exposed. The details always talk about a significant number of people who have lost their savings in these schemes. But even after investigations, arrests, and sentences, new scammers will pop up and keep doing the same thing over and over again. But what exactly is a Ponzi scheme? And what are the signs to look out for? And how can you protect yourself? And what are the biggest Ponzi schemes of all time? You might be surprised to find out that the US government might be running the biggest Ponzi scheme in history, according to some economists. So stay tuned till the end of the episode to learn about that one.
Okay, so I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah. We should watch this in 0.125x.
It is.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
That's still slow. Maybe 1.5.
Pretty slow.
Anyway, not a big surprise, right? And the reason being is because our economy doesn't work without debt and the interest paid to that debt.
Right. Well, because they need the $1.25 for every dollar printed. It just doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
So the only way to get out of it is to print more money.
Exactly. So let's keep going here.
Let's get into it.
You are watching Cold Fusion TV.
Oh, the intro, blah, blah.
So first of all, what is a Ponzi scheme? A Ponzi scheme is an investment fraud. The scheme promises high and sometimes quick returns, but in reality, it's just paying off existing investors with funds collected from new investors who have also been fooled by the promise of a quick buck. Ponzi schemes use money from their new investors to pay off old investors while taking a cut for themselves. Since there is no money being earned by selling a product or service, Ponzi schemes...
A prime example of how, and it's like this might be an unpopular opinion, but a prime example of how they can manipulate that and start a fraud right there is through property and real estate. The promise of a return on your home or like no mortgage at the end of that. And that's a big part of the reason the economy's got so out of hand is real estate.
Of course. And what it boils down to is that the whole system is a Ponzi scheme. So it doesn't really matter what you're talking about, whether it's real estate, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's anything.
Debt interest is what builds economies.
Yeah, exactly.
So if the people are borrowing from you, then you're going to get continual interest to the system, which creates your value. But you have to print more money or use the interest of others to loan. You're loaning it out again.
Also,
right?
you have to maintain new investors coming in.
So
if you don't have new investors coming in, that's when we see things crash down.
So basically, the whole thing is taking money from Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
So,
and just because Paul was there first, that's the only reason, right? Like it's Peter, but like so when he's talking about the United States potentially being the largest Ponzi scheme, it's like they're just doing it on a global scale using countries instead of people.
Yeah.
And that's how bonds and dividends and all this stuff work right now.
The only conversation that nobody's arguing about in any of the social justice movements is the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about the Federal Reserve.
Of course. I mean, well, a little bit, but not in this regard. Not blaming them for the problem. They're just, everybody kind of knows. They talk about the Federal Reserve and what they're going to do with interest rates, and they try to use that to
they're
trade.
the root of the problem.
But of course, everything
Right.
everything.
The social structure that everybody's crying about is created by the narrative that moves finance.
And the reason that it's such a shit show is because chaos is profitable. And like we were talking earlier today, like if I had a little mini farm on my property,
it's data energy.
Yeah, if I had a little mini farm on my property and I was self-sustainable, and so are you, and so is everybody else on the road, there's no need for a monetary policy because we all take care of ourselves, right? And even to some standard, you be a good neighbor and trade cucumbers for tomatoes or whatever. I had good corn this year, you had good cucumbers. That type of thing can be done if you need to do some sort of trading.
How do
or
we
whatever.
know that's what the Vikings weren't fighting to preserve?
Yeah, there you go. Right there you go. Any person that's fighting to preserve their homeland is fighting to preserve their self-sovereignty, right? Like we know
that's just it. Self-sovereignty. We don't have that.
No, we know that the United States has infiltrated countries all around the world to promote democracy, but we know that democracy is an illusion. So they literally go into these places that are self-sovereign and are not on the banking system that everybody else is on by the Federal Reserve, our child thing, whatever that is, and they go and take these little, they're just little small communities, but they're working for themselves and they're doing everything for themselves, so they don't need any sort of monetary policy, any debt, any loans, any things like that. But they go in there because they need what, Julian?
Resources.
Well, they need new investors to keep their game going.
Well, yeah, but there's also prime elements in these places that they've...
Yeah, well, yeah, some is for resources and some is for gold and some is for other stuff like that too. But I think...
One thing they never find is weapons.
Well, yeah, they plant whatever they need to plant and use the media to tell you whatever they need to tell you to make you... Because they can't go do stuff without you being behind them, right? So they need to... But they fabricate events that lead to mass brainwashing and mass indecision making for the public.
They create problems so they can offer solutions
that
perpetuate the system that
we live in. And the narrative.
Because it was the only way to keep their wealth going is to try to take in, like you said, new investors. But the thing is now is that nobody's buying into the States anymore. Nobody wants bonds.
Nobody's buying into the States anymore. Money is clearly going into Bitcoin. So just like we saw 2 years ago, we had $3 trillion in the space. So that was $3 trillion that was taken out of traditional finance. And it hit hard. It shook things up. If you haven't noticed, it shook things up quite a bit. And a lot of people think it has to do with one thing or another. And whatever they're telling you in the media, I'll tell you right now, if you see it on Facebook, if you see it on Instagram, if you see it on TV, it's not the truth.
Right. Okay? So let's get forward to this Charles part. Where's Charles at?
Charles? Maybe that's it right there.
Require a constant flow of new money to sustain. Not surprisingly, after a time, it becomes increasingly harder to find new investors. And when that happens, the scheme fails. A Ponzi scheme is not to be confused with a pyramid scheme. A pyramid scheme requires recruitment to bring in more people to increase their returns. A Ponzi scheme may or may not need that. For example, a Ponzi scheme would be something like BitConnect, a fake cryptocurrency that promised huge returns from a mysterious AI trading algorithm. But in reality, it used money from old investors to pay off new investors.
And let me tell you that we are really changing the world.
That's hilarious.
The world is not anymore the way it used to be. No. BitConnect!
Right, listen to this guy.
Wow!
Thousands of victims swindled out of more than $2 billion may be receiving some justice after one of the leaders of a crypto scheme pleaded guilty.
This is believed to be the biggest cryptocurrency fraud ever charged criminal.
He says this scam, run through a crypto lending program called BitConnect, is believed to have swindled thousands of people around the world out of more than $2 billion worth of Bitcoin.
They claimed that if you traded your Bitcoin for their currency, cryptocurrency called the BitConnect coin.
So I just want to stop that for a second. So how interesting is that they came up, like they used a way, like you and I DCA into Bitcoin. That's how we get our hands on Bitcoin. These guys deal with trillions of dollars. They scammed everybody, used the narrative, manipulated everybody to get their hands on what did it just say, $2 billion worth of Bitcoin? Why do you think they went through that would have been a lot of work. There was a lot of people got recruited. They had buildings downtown.
It's a massive team.
It was huge, right? It was huge. They went through so much work to get $2 billion worth of Bitcoin. Kind of shows you that there is worth there. Not only just a little bit of worth, there's a lot of worth there. They went through a lot of hard work to get this Bitcoin. So a lot of people, I just kind of want to put it out there to people who think Bitcoin is a scam or are scared of it. when you see people trying to steal something from you, it's clear that it has value.
Yeah.
Okay? If they were trying to steal your gold, if something like this, you would be like, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm not
and
doing
that's basically the point that I want to get at with this video. But.
So anybody who's scared about crypto scams and stuff like that, it's like that just proves to me that there's people out there that maybe don't have the means to buy it right now or the means to get it, so they're going to try and do whatever they can to get it because they're aware of the true value. So, I mean, honestly, scamming, anything like this actually turns me more towards it because it just shows that there's value. It shows that there's interest. It shows that people want it and will go to illegal lengths to get it.
Yeah. Bitcoin. Yeah, not outside of Bitcoin.
So, and what happened there is what they're saying is they
took Bitcoin.
They took Bitcoin for the BitConnect.
Yeah, exactly.
The BitConnect token wasn't actually anything of existence.
Yeah.
Bitcoin was, and that's why you had the only thing you could buy BitConnect token.
But I mean,
was
at that time also it was so they could acquire the Bitcoin to exchange to fiat and enjoy.
Well, yeah,
there's like same with SBF. Like SBF talks about not enjoying his money and all this and like. You know, the amount of properties and things like that the company acquired. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah. But it just shows true value.
But anyway, the other thing too is that, you know, this is why I want to let's go to the origin of Ponzi schemes. This is going to tell us who Charles Ponzi is. We're going to go back to the origin of Ponzi schemes about 100 years.
In this video?
Prior to now, yeah.
Ponzi versus pyramid, just skip that one.
I don't. This is why we got to skip through some
Charles
of this, or else
Ponzi.
we'll never get through. So let's listen to.
So who was Charles Ponzi?
So here's
Charles Ponzi was a swindler known for starting a scheme of his kind in 1920 in Boston. Charles Ponzi was born in 1882 in Italy. As a young boy, he kept stealing from the church so much that his family got sick of him and deported him to America in 1903. Charles worked in a restaurant as a waiter, but continually shortchanged the customers, keeping the difference, so he was fired. In 1907, he moved to Canada, and because of his skills with numbers, he got employed at a bank. Here, he would forge the signatures of clients and cash their checks. He was caught and spent 3 years in prison. After his release, Charles went back to the US and started up a scheme to smuggle Italian immigrants from Canada to the US. Again, he was caught and jailed for 2 years. This time, when he got out, he went to Boston, and in November of 1919, he came across the idea for his grand scheme. Supposedly, this was achieved by buying discounted postal reply coupons in other countries and redeeming them at face value in the US, where the currency was much stronger. He promised clients a 50% profit within 45 days or 100% profit within 90 days.
Which is arbitrage trading.
Because postage stamp had value.
Yeah, because it was an asset at the time, right? It's something that you can exchange for money.
Yeah.
An international postal congress had agreed to issue postal reply coupons throughout the world. The bearers could redeem these international coupons for postage stamps in their local country.
So this is another thing, too, that's kind of funny. It's like, just remember that what you just heard there. They just decided to do this, to make these postage stamps, and now they have value. That's it. They just decided this. Just remember that.
Well, look at NFTs now too.
Yeah. Well,
it's just
like a JPEG NFT or like anything that's registered on a blockchain NFT. Because
we're gonna basically this video is gonna lead us into the comparison, and nothing's really changed except for the technological advancement.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're just coming up with new ways. So we could call Bitcoin a Ponzi at the end of this, but we'll go into more detailed description. But.
This was to address a real problem. Immigrants who came to America could afford to buy stamps. The relatives who stayed home could not. So this was a way to allow relatives back home to write back to the family in America.
If you went to a European post office with American dollars and bought postal reply coupons and then brought them to this country and cashed them in, you got U.S. postage many times more valuable than the U.S. money you spent for them. And this was the premise.
Ponzi believed that for every $1 of postal reply coupons purchased, he could earn $5 when he redeemed them for stamps. With a 400% profit from these initial purchases, Ponzi would buy additional coupons and redeem them for even more money. It seemed to be a proposition that couldn't lose.
The only issue with this plan was that Ponzi would need to employ people to line up and collect coupons and stamps, gather them up, and ship them overseas. So this would probably cost more than the money generated from the scheme itself. So, Charles Ponzi decided to buy no coupon stamps at all and just tell people that the scheme would make them rich.
You can't just make money like that.
Yeah.
So he takes all the money, never even does the proposition.
Never even does it.
Yeah.
All your money in 3 months. America was booming in 1920, so people were all looking for a quick way to get rich. Wild financial speculation was all the rage, so Ponzi fit right in. He was charismatic and had a gift for talking, so everyone wanted a piece of the pie, and word quickly spread around. Some people would take out their life savings from a bank to invest with Ponzi. But the thing was, Ponzi would actually pay back investors as promised, so the whole thing seemed legitimate, and people went crazy. By March of 1920, investors had thrown in $400,000, but Ponzi owed them $600,000 because of the promises of his scheme. Most people trusted him so much that they kept their money in so they could earn even more. Because of this, Charles could always make the payments when they came due. 2 months later in
Scare
May,
people.
investors had thrown in
FOMO.
1.6 million, and by July, this had swelled to 41 million. But at this stage, Charles owed 55 million, and that was the problem. The more money Charles Ponzi received, the more in debt he was. If he promised to double everyone's money, he would just be owing more and more. All of this didn't matter though, as long as everyone didn't want their money out at once. Soon,
Which is
Ponzi was
exactly what a bank
Right.
does right now.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
averaging $3.4 million a day.
In
He bought himself
1920,
a
he
$7
was
million
pulling in
home with a heated
3.4
pool
mil a
and
day.
air conditioning.
Crazy.
Absolutely unheard of in 1920. He bought the very same shipping firm when he smuggled Italian immigrants, just so he could fire his old boss. Just 6 months ago, he was broke, but now he could have anything he wanted. Massive crowds were growing outside of Ponzi's office, and officials got suspicious. Police were called in to investigate, but after they talked to Charles Ponzi, 2 of the 3 officers ended up investing. In fact, a quarter of Boston's police force were investing with Charles Ponzi. On the 26th of July, a Boston newspaper ran the first critical story of Ponzi. It stated, if Ponzi could make 300% profit for his investors, why does he put his money in the bank where it would only make him 2 or 3%? Why not just invest all the money with himself? It was a good point. And another article stated that the numbers didn't add up. There would have to be 160 million of these coupons circulating to amass such profits. But in reality...
So there you go. So he's now created what was in the space now, it was paper Bitcoin, where people say they have Bitcoin to sell you, but they don't actually. And that's what SPF did. He did the paper Bitcoin.
And so, and this is going to draw into the conversation of spot ETFs being totally fucking useless. And that's just another Ponzi, because you're gonna get exposure to Bitcoin with
a third party.
A third party,
it doesn't make any sense.
Based on a return from exchange.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. The whole idea of Bitcoin is that you don't need these ding dongs.
Yeah.
Because they're not out there actually trying to help you.
No.
That's literally how they stay wealthy.
Yeah, they're doing the middleman job. They're the sleazeballs of the world.
And this is why I'm talking about Bitcoin, potentially becoming part of the Ponzi, because with things like spot ETFs coming out, that's exactly it. You don't actually buy any Bitcoin.
Yeah, you just buy.
They're telling
exposure.
you you're going to get the rewards of Bitcoin by getting exposure through my firm.
That's when you
don't need that because that puts them in control of all the freaking Bitcoin.
Exactly. That's when you failed, because then they can just tell you that they can sell you Bitcoin whether you know whether they have it or not, right? So the spot ETF thing is definitely super sketchy. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't really understand why people are so gung-ho about it right now. And again, saying that it's going to send Bitcoin to 100K. It's like, you guys don't get it. Like, I don't know. It's not how it works.
It doesn't
it's not
work,
how it's supposed to work. It's not what it's for.
And by design, you can't just send it skyrocketing to
right. So these are the clear
numbers.
issues of traditional finance that we've been dealing with for hundreds of years, right? And this is what Bitcoin was designed to prevent and to stop. So it's like having a Bitcoin ETF makes absolutely no sense for Bitcoin.
And if it went to 100K overnight, it would drop 50% in the same amount of time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, of
so
course,
it's like,
right? Because the order book can only handle so much at a time. So if you put in an order for that much Bitcoin, well, it just starts soaking up all these orders that are already there, and eventually you're going to run out of orders, and then that means that the price is going to start coming back down again because it has to go where the orders are. There's no orders there. There's no buyer. There's no seller.
And most circulating supply is sitting on exchange, right? Where that's actually a question that I should look into myself. But where is all the supply sitting that people can actually access and buy that's circulating right now before production, right? So it's like they can't to think like, it's going to go 500K, 250K, it's going to overnight, it could be $1 million by July or like whatever that guy was saying. You know what I mean? It's like they don't. Don't listen to the noise because it's all anything in the noise is a Ponzi, and that's how they're taking the money from you.
Exactly.
So
they either scare you, they either bore you, or they either confuse you. Those are the 3 tactics they use to try and get you in or out of the market.
And with Bitcoin, the only thing they can try and do is scoop up yours by scaring you.
Exactly,
out,
right? They can
unless you start buying into the idea that you need to make your way into Bitcoin through some sort of ETF so you have safety or security, which is BS. That's a fucking illusion too, because you don't need it with Bitcoin.
Exactly. Because
Bitcoin's the most secure thing there is.
Yeah, that's just giving yourself a bridge to something that it's like saying, my house has a moat around it and there's a bridge to get there. It's like, well, why don't you just get rid of the bridge? Like pave a nice pathway, get rid of the water, it's just relying on somebody else to do something for you. They're going to fill their bag first. We've said this before. There's no need for third party in Bitcoin.
Yeah. So anyway, I want to go to the part where Ponzi here gets pinched, and we'll see what happens.
Oh yeah, is
The
it coming up
first time.
soon?
Yeah.
reality, there's only about 27,000 of these in the world, and there was also no reports of massive purchases of coupons. When these
So
news
already
articles
it doesn't
broke,
add up.
there was a massive panic.
Doesn't make sense.
A riot ensued at Ponzi's
That
office.
he can have that kind of money.
$27 million were withdrawn in 2 days, but Ponzi could afford to pay everyone back, and he did it with a smile while serving people coffee and donuts as they lined up. Nerves were calmed, and people actually reinvested. But it wouldn't last. Government regulators and more bad press came Ponzi's way, the latter of which stated
So
he was
wait, was
completely
that it?
bankrupt.
Did we just miss it?
It started another
Did he
panic.
just shake hands with the cops there? And
No, that already happened. But yeah, he already had.
Anyway,
the
so
cops
yeah.
already came in, investigated, and he just talked his way out of it and got them to invest
right,
with
so
him.
so absolutely no proof of any transactions or trades or anything to do with the postage stamps. All of a sudden, he's shaking hands with the cops, and the cops are invested.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the beginning of the U.S. and Federal Reserve ultimate Ponzi on the Western
civilization.
Yeah.
That's what we're living through right now. That's
So,
the beginning.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And or potentially not the beginning. Maybe there's already people that
well,
are
there was
aware.
1907 was another one too.
Okay,
so they were already manipulating markets.
Right, so there's already people behind the curtain playing these games, doing this kind of stuff. He was just an SPF. He was just a guy that was like, okay, perfect.
A scapegoat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're going to do this?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, you're going to pay us now, and we're going to let you continue to do this.
Yeah.
And because they know that eventually it's going to blow up.
All they have to do is wait for a guy who's smart enough to leverage the game.
Yeah.
And then they just take advantage of it.
Exactly. They just say, oh, perfect.
Oh, yeah, sure. Hey, we'll shake hands. Oh, nothing to see here, folks. We actually invested with him.
Exactly.
So you can feel safe now.
But
right?
But what the funny thing is he was actually giving them money. They weren't giving him money.
Until it all comes out in the wash.
Yeah.
Right? Then when it comes out in the wash, this guy's the scapegoat. But he didn't have a choice.
Of course, because they stayed behind the curtain the whole time, so that you would never know.
And a rush for people to get all of their money out. Over $200 million had been invested, but Ponzi was short $110 million.
This isn't the
Everyone tried
20s,
to get their money out at once, and he couldn't pay. By August of 1920, it was all over. Ponzi was indicted on 86 counts of fraud, and many investors lost everything. It was a massive lesson for them and us to never just follow the crowd and always do your research before investing. Even though Charles Ponzi got convicted and jailed for his deceit, it did not deter others from coming up with such schemes. So why do people keep falling for it? Almost everyone wants to earn easy money and get rich. In the real world, this usually means that you need to work hard for it, but it's a human tendency to look for shortcuts. But taking shortcuts often leads to trouble, as is with the case with Ponzi schemes.
Which is so brutal because realistically, or if we wanted to actually make a better place for everybody to live, then we wouldn't worry about trying to get rich and exit the system. We would try and make the system better. Right. Like everyone in these days is just trying to get rich so they can leave the system, right, and go do their own thing. But it's like that you're not helping anybody by doing this. So like for instance, all these YouTubers and stuff that you see on TV or see on YouTube that are saying like, oh yeah, we can help you. This is build a community. It's all we're here to help you. It's like, well, no, you're here to help yourself, and you are just being a hypocrite and doing the exact same thing that Ponzi does, right? But it's like if you really wanted to help and you did have the money, then why wouldn't you, like put the money back into your community? And I'm sure like some of them do on smaller accounts, but it's like you're still spreading the word of get rich and exit the system, right? Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's just it. You're trying to teach other people how to get rich. So you leverage the system, and now they can't really control that, right? Yeah. But like the more the money, like a YouTuber getting paid $200 million is like, it's just asinine. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like this money, the more that money gets flooded in there, the more that they can take advantage of it, the worse it is for the economy, in my opinion. I mean, maybe, I don't know. They say that creates more growth, but I don't see that because the Federal Reserve itself, like you said, is a Ponzi. So we can't just continue to inject more money and more currency supply without hurting everybody else.
Yeah, eventually, or hurting somebody, right? So and an unfortunate situation is that like the developing of countries and the developing of land and turning forests into subdivisions, development is, quote, profitable. But all these guys, we know that a major developer will get a loan to start his development, right? They don't do it with money that they have in the bank. They borrow money, which has interest rates on it. They do all the work. All these people have to pay taxes, so there's a reason why it continues to happen, because they every single time the developer hires the tree faller, hires the contractor, hires the road, everything, like every person pays tax, every hand that touches it has to pay income tax. It's like that's how this system works right now. That's economics the way we see it. Like it doesn't, and it ultimately. That's why the stock market...
Debt interest is what...
Right? And so we see the market rally and crash, rally and crash, rally and crash. And it's going to forever do that until literally the way that people think about things change, because it's not...
But it's also a 100-year-old or 150-year-old language written in financial charts, right?
Yeah.
And there's a reason that they don't teach you Latin in schools. There's a reason that they don't teach you financial literacy in schools, because they don't want you literate in the things that are actually important to your existence.
So here's a question for you. Did Rome actually fall?
Yeah,
right?
I love that. Did Rome fall?
Did Rome fall?
Or did it just change names?
Exactly, right? Because matter cannot be created nor destroyed. It just changes form or shape. So it's like, you got to kind of, when you see this stuff happening and all the stuff that's going on in the world these days, you got to give your head a shake if you don't see what's happening, because it's clear as day that nothing new under the sun.
So Bernie Madoff, I don't know if this one goes into the history of his life and how he came here, but he's also another immigrant that came here just, and figured out a way to leverage the system and leverage the market.
And debt.
With debt and interest.
Those higher returns because his bank was run smarter and more efficiently than other banks. Employees were not supposed to ask too many questions about where the money was invested.
People say, how in the world has this business of yours grown, Alan? I say, well, simply because we do things differently. Many times we do them the way they used to do them 20 years ago.
But at least one employee, Charles Hazlitt, did start asking questions.
In fact, every time I brought up anything in meetings, everybody's looking at me very shocked.
But do you think people didn't ask questions because the money kept flowing?
Sure, blind ignorance. Very fancy. I used to know stuff. I talked to the manager of the bank. He didn't seem to know a lot about banking in general.
We can talk over this a little bit here. This is the guy before Madoff. So Madoff, there's also, I just watched the documentary on Netflix. There's like a limited series documentary. It goes kind of in depth more about the financial structure. And I don't know if it says it in this one or if it's in the documentary, but he went from 1993 to 2008 without ever making a trade, ever. There was no record of anything to do with his
once the money's flowing in, then you don't need to actually do it anymore, right?
Yeah.
Because you're just paying the old investors with the new investors, right?
So keep going, go forward. I think we haven't hit it yet. So the money that he used to build in his trade building and the technology he used was basically people just writing fake trades so they could send customers transaction history and where their money was coming from, right? Because he still has to pay people that come back for their annual dividends or whatever the hell he's interest is giving them, right?
And the truth is that whether he did this right and it was terrible and but everything's like that. Like even look at Apple and look at all this stuff that's going on, Tesla. Like where do you think the money comes from?
And he was connected to JP Morgan and stuff too. JP Morgan directly profited. So it's like you've got to wonder how many people know. How many people knew? If he was able to actively take money, I think they totaled to like $66 billion. It's the most realized gain from any Ponzi scheme ever, too. So through the 80s, this guy went from the 80s until 2008 when they locked him up. The SEC looked at him numerous times. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna tell me that wasn't orchestrated, and like maybe that guy came here, leverage the system, but when they find out you can leverage the system, then you're in their pocket.
Exactly. And once somebody that has the balls to do it, they're just like perfect. They're just sitting around waiting for it to happen, right?
Yeah.
Because I know it's like, okay, perfect. Just like how the mafia would work. It's like, okay, you're doing
well,
this.
That's basically what
exactly
it is.
Right. You're running this in my state or country or whatever. It's like, okay, you can do it, but you're gonna pay me this is what we all seen the movies. We all see
it's the financial cartel,
right? Like so, it's like they get paid, and then the media and everybody else just continues to put these scapegoats in the spotlight the whole time, right? So that when eventually they want to pull the plug, okay, we're done with this guy. Everybody knows it was all his fault.
And
right?
if these people know the history and science and all this other jazz and all these theories and everything else, and they are the financial cartel, if this idea is real, it's like, do you think that they have the moral standards that tells them that they can't cheat? Because if the morality is objective to them, then what they do to earn money or take advantage doesn't matter to them. at the end of the day, right?
No.
And we see people lie, cheat, and steal all over the place to get ahead. But can you call it lying, cheating, or stealing, or are they just leveraging something that they know they can because they just know it's more profitable?
Right.
They just know it's more profitable for them. So why wouldn't they?
The saying is, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah.
Right. And it's true, because like the guy, so he's doing really well. Well, yeah, he's just playing this game better than you. Like, don't get mad at him.
Yeah.
Because he's better than you at the game, or he's more ballsy, he's taking higher risks.
Example
whatever,
of that,
right?
like these videos of the tip culture, like DoorDash people throwing burritos at the door because somebody didn't tip, because maybe they couldn't afford it, or they don't care to, because they are against tip culture.
Yeah.
And we're yelling at each other about it on the internet and social media, when the reality is the Federal Reserve devalued the dollar so much that we're angry at each other, and we don't even know why.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like, why the hell is that our obligation between each other to make sure that everybody can just afford to exist?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, that's
exactly.
ridiculous, right?
Yeah. It's chaos is profitable,
right?
And they keep like I said,
they had
nothing new under the sun. Like, it's just this
they had
same thing.
They had to lower the
over
prosecution rate in California, so you can now steal up to $950 worth of crap without getting prosecuted. And you see like groups of 20, 30 people mobbing out of department stores.
Guess what happens? The department store just writes it all off as a tax loss. Doesn't affect them whatsoever. The employees all
and some insurance company has to cover it.
Some insurance company covers it. They print the money to bail them out if they
we got to send another $12 billion over to Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly. It's all just laundered money. It's all just how it all flows through.
But they have to print more.
Yeah.
But now with things like Bitcoin coming about that chip away and erode this monetary policy, and now people losing interest in investments with the United States because of the uncertainty, they don't have that new investor money coming in.
So that's the red flag.
Keep this system going.
And that's the red flag that has been obviously flashing and waving for quite a while now, that people know, like, the end, every Ponzi scheme as we see, it comes to an end.
Like, United States is a company, and guess what? Nobody's buying it anymore.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
And so, the wild illusions they show us. Let's see Madoff here. We kind of talked about.
Is that Madoff?
No, this is not. No, this is what I mean. I think he's a little.
In March 2011,
people, like, if you're interested in seeing it, the Madoff one, there's a series on Netflix that's worth watching. It's pretty wild, but this should give it a little overview of
which one's Madoff. This guy.
Yeah. There's Madoff.
A $20 billion fraud by Bernie Madoff.
So $20 billion realized.
The largest.
Right. 66 billion total.
Realized Ponzi scheme in history. As former chairman of the Nasdaq stock market and his squeaky clean image of an investment guru, he attracted several high-profile clients, such as film director Steven Spielberg. But his fraudulent investments were exposed in 2008. His Ponzi scheme wiped out people's fortunes, and more than 15,400 claims were filed against him. He became so hated that he had to wear a bulletproof vest to court. In March of 2009, Madoff pled guilty to the charges, and the courts stripped him and his wife of their wealth. He was sentenced to jail for 150 years, where he passed away in April of 2021. If you want to see the full story on Bernie Madoff, you can check out the Cold Fusion episode on him. Okay, I said I'd say 5, but here's a bonus one. Number 6.
Oh, they didn't even go into
US
it.
Federal Reserve
It's weird that they didn't go into Madoff much. So I guess they have an episode on just Madoff. So yeah, he started his fund in the 80s essentially, and he had what was supposed to be a trade business that he was offering profits for through some arbitrage trading thing, but he didn't actually record. He wasn't recording any trades, and then he started a management, like a hedge fund, like something like J.P. Morgan or BlackRock or whatever. And he didn't register the business, so it was an unregistered money management service, right? So he was just taking in.
It's like by definition an unregistered security.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and the start of the ultimate Ponzi scheme.
Oh my God!
Right. So I think he raised a total of. He may have invested some. I'm sure he must have into real estate or whatever. I'm sure he had things.
Of course, right?
But it was he took in like $45 billion over the time of his career. Right. Like, it was
crazy.
just insane amount of money. But again, just like Charles Ponzi, the powers that be, the police, the investigators, the SEC, whatever. Regulatory action authorities that there is come shake this guy's hand. They go, oh shit, this is profitable.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? We didn't find anything out of the ordinary
Looks
here.
Good to us.
Right?
Nothing to see here.
But it's like, you could go and look if they made up if they made up statements that they sent to their customers, those trades would have had to been made on some brokerage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, of course they could have figured it out, right?
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
So
no doubt.
it was BS. So they shake his hand again. They take the bribe, you know what I mean? Whatever the bribe may be, whether it's whether it's threatening or you can continue with your Ponzi scheme. Like maybe this guy did come and scheme but he figured the game out.
Mm-hmm.
So then the powers that be go, okay, you figured the game out, that's great, but now you got to keep it going.
Yeah.
You got to keep giving us our cut, which is massive, and then we'll keep you going. So how did he last from the 80s? He didn't make a trade between 1993 and 2008. That's insane.
Because all you got to do is get the ball rolling.
So are you going to tell me that now the Federal Reserve and the powers that be didn't know what was going on?
Well, obviously they knew, right?
Of course they did.
But this is what I love about Bitcoin and especially blockchain technology is because this is how, like, what we were watching as the traditional finance system, everything just gets
exposes,
lost, right? Yeah, so Bitcoin and the blockchain exposes the Ponzi, and it's like...
It exposes the Wizard of Oz.
I love how... Or I don't love it, but I think it's hilarious when people call Bitcoin or associate Bitcoin with a Ponzi right away. The first thing they think, oh, isn't it a Ponzi scheme? It's like,
but
it's hilarious.
It literally, well, I hate the word literally. I want to take that out of my vocabulary.
I literally want to take that out of my. I literally want to take that
for some reason. Anyway, but Bitcoin cannot, by definition, be a Ponzi scheme because there's no issuer. There's no one entity that benefits from what goes into the network. A network is all it is, and it's for all of us. It's for all of us, right?
So if you participate, you're an investor.
You're getting the same benefit as anybody else, and nobody can ever rip you off unless you let your emotion overtake your logic and jump out of the ship. Like when the sea gets stormy, do you jump out of the boat?
No.
Or do you batten down the hatches?
Yeah. It's true.
Right? And look at the candles. It's exactly what it is, man.
Yeah, totally.
And if you jump out of the boat when shit is stormy, you're probably going to drown and you're not going to, it's going to be cold. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But with Bitcoin, all that noise, it can't be a Ponzi. So don't let them scare you out. All you got to do is dollar cost average and continue to go in because there's a reason that they are sucking it all up. There's a reason that they want to put out a spot ETF so that you give them your currency in exchange for more currency instead of physical Bitcoin.
Exactly. So it's technically no different than BitConnect.
Right?
It's exactly the same
And it's
thing.
like, if you can use social media, if you can do any of these things that involve your cell phone, you can 100% understand Bitcoin and get onto a brokerage and get some into your custody. Right? So
there's simply just no need for third parties anymore. Now that we have the technology to all speak for yourself. We don't need politicians anymore because we don't need other people appointed by us to tell you what we think. We have our phones. We can share our opinion instantly all across the entire world. So, I mean, like we were talking about before, we're clearly going through a massive transition. The word is getting thrown around for many different reasons right now, but the true transition that we're going through is the financial transition, and it's just another reason or another example of like why they want to keep you so distracted with all this other BS. Like,
the distraction is the narrative.
Yeah,
but the market doesn't work without a narrative.
Exactly, right? And why is the narrative so obscure right now? Things are so insane. People thinking they're this and that and trans and this and all these things. It's like, okay, I mean, I get it. Everybody deserves to be happy, but you're literally subduing yourself to the ideas of the media, and they're making you think you're unhappy when you probably, if you just turn the TV off and go outside and take a walk through the woods, you probably realize that everything's okay. Like if you sit there and you look on the screens and you see all these things of other people doing things, that's when you get sucked into depression. That's when you get sucked into these ideas.
Depression is the effect of cause,
right? And
the cause is you sucking up shit you shouldn't.
Exactly. Like you turn your phone off and you go outside into the woods and just take a look around and take a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
For goodness sake.
The issues that people think are global are literally just over here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Of course. Right. You go to other parts of the world, like you go to Morocco. That video that I watched the other day, or what RG shared the other day, it's hilarious. The guy goes to Morocco and asks people randomly on the beach, like, how many genders are there? And they all look at him like, what? What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Hey, how many genders are
there?
Or
it's like you go to
girls?
And it's like people are like, oh, the cultures where men would say that a woman is somehow better to a man or more respectful to a man, they say that the woman is oppressed, right? okay, well, that they're pointing the finger at the Afghani culture and the Muslim culture, right? Big time right now when they talk about those things. When it's like, if you go to any of the I want to call them white or European countries, you know what I mean? Where the color is different, it's not a different race. It's like they have that same nuclear family dynamic there too, because they know how important the respect between a man and a woman is. It's none of this, you got to earn my respect before I'll even listen to you or entertain you.
No.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's so damaging to society. And the way that we do that is by
dividing
by putting so many opinions and so much BS out there that nobody can agree on anything.
Yeah. Together we stand, divided we fall. So it's a lot easier to push you over when you're divided. If you're standing together, linking arms with a lot of other people, they're not going to be able to push you around.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't let them separate you. Stay together.
We got to get it back in the shield wall.
Right? Like, it's so obvious to me, and it's just such a shame that it's not obvious to everybody else.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think that sometimes people call me crazy for having logical, like, clearly
if you
sound
have a conscious conversation about the truth and objective reality that's happening around us, people tune out.
Yeah, they can't.
The cognitive dissonance that's involved. Well, that's basically
it's being installed.
It just
right?
And it's
it's being installed in them with everything that's happening. Even
so,
it's just brutal,
to look at it from a different perspective and to do that is to have the revelation, the realization that you've been getting duped. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to admit you were wrong, right?
Yeah.
But that's how you win. Like, you take a loss, you admit that you lost, you figure out why you lost, you change something, you make an adjustment, and you try again. Right? You don't just give up or just say, okay, well, this isn't for me because it didn't work the first time I tried it. Or, it's just like, don't give up and don't get caught up in all the other BS. Do what makes you happy and continue to do that every day.
Successful people are just people who didn't give up when they failed.
Exactly, right? And
they failed a bunch of times. I mean,
yeah,
there's privileged people that are born into fucking stupid families that we're talking about. But that's what we're trying to change.
Those are actually the most unhappy people in the world because they didn't actually earn anything they have, and they have no real idea of what purpose is.
Yeah.
They were born with all this stuff in their hand, like, well, this is great. And as a kid, sure, you don't really understand much, so you're happy. But then when you get older, it doesn't make any sense. And it's like, I have no purpose. I didn't really do anything. And that's why generational wealth usually only lasts about 3 or 4 generations because
the people get weaker.
Somebody
had to work for
exactly.
it. And then it gets just...
And a lot of time, that person had to work so hard that they didn't have time to educate their family about what they're doing.
That's like that meme, and we're literally experiencing that.
Yeah.
That good men create good times.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Blah, blah, blah.
Well, you said something about your dad being a banker or something, right? Is that you?
My dad was a banker.
Yeah, and he didn't tell you anything about it, right?
Didn't teach me shit about finance.
Right? So, like, what
but
the hell?
He was too stressed out from slaving to the system himself.
Exactly.
The last thing he wants to come home and is like...
Exactly,
But the other part of it, too, is like, I don't think my dad fully understood the language of finance either.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And
many people do.
And it's like this whole language of finance thing, too, and this has been going on since the Richard Wyckoff... designed the indicators that the majority of major traders and trading firms still use today, right? And they have an obligation, basically from the regulatory body, that they have to make the market. They're market makers. They have to buy when the indication says buy.
Yeah.
They have to sell and distribute back to the market when it says do so.
And
the thing is, they work off way larger time frames.
That's what I was going to say.
So these crashes that we see for 12 months is nothing compared to the people who have been playing the game for 100 years.
Yeah, nothing.
Right? This last, even call it, a year and a half, even though we've had 100% gain here in 2023, this year and a half is but a blip of what's actually going on in the grand scheme of things, and the language that these people are translating or writing for us. It's like that's one thing I don't really figure out is like who's writing the language, or is it just kind of a subconscious thing that people follow based on the narrative and the indicators?
Of course. Well, that's all they use the narrative to try and manipulate you as much as they can, but ultimately they can't manipulate you 100%, right? And we know that there is a massive pool of liquidity at 12K within Bitcoin. We can look on the books and you can see, like, if something might happen, there's a very good chance that we are going to see a fabricated event within the next 12 to 18 months where everything crashes, okay? Like, and they talk about recession. You've been hearing recession for 2 years or whatever. And the thing is that the recession is going to happen after this event happens. So we already did have a massive event, and
the recession would usually come at a time where they fucking stop printing money, spike all the interest rates,
right, which is happening right now. Yeah. But a lot of the times we kind of see a double dip in interest rates. If you look back on the scale of interest rates going all the way back to 1900, there was several times where we went through a little bit of a situation where interest rates went low, and then things got too inflated, so we had to go up, and then they overcorrected, so we had to go back down, and then they undercorrected, and we had to go back up again. So it's like we were saying too.
But but this is what I'm trying to say. I don't think it's over or under corrected. It's exactly what they wanted.
Right.
Because they have the ability to help us all push the price up there.
Yeah.
And they also have no problem taking out that much liquidity.
Yeah.
Because they've been in since the beginning of the chart.
Right. So they confuse you, or they bore you, or they scare you. Right. That's it.
Right. And when you have somebody that controls the amount of capital that places like BlackRock and JP Morgan and all this stuff does, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is why I believe all of those things to just be Ponzi's.
Mm-hmm.
The whole beauty of Bitcoin is that you do not need a third party anymore, and we need to stop giving these people our money.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been designed specifically because of all this other stuff that we've been going through for the last, arguably thousands of years, right? If you want to argue that Rome never fell, or you want to argue that this has been going on for you have things like the Freemasons that have been around we know they've been around for 1,000 years, and we know they've had influence in the way that humanity has been driven and steered, and all this stuff. Like we know this stuff. It's written in books, and you can find the information if you just go looking for it. So it's like, why is it so hard to believe that this is still happening?
Look at how much history they've covered up with fires and war and things like that. The first one being like the Library of Alexandria, for example. You know what I mean? We've burned history, as we've conquered the world.
Of course, because they only want you to know what works best for them.
Cap this off with this bit about the Federal Reserve here.
Yeah.
According to some economists, the entire US Federal Reserve System is a Ponzi scheme. Here's the oversimplified version. The United States has a huge national debt which is owed to foreign countries such as China and Japan. These countries and other investors loan the US government money in exchange for a stable return. These debts are short-term debts, so the US government has to pay back these investors trillions yearly. Currently, the United States can't pay because they don't produce and export enough goods to support their spending. So, whenever the debt expires, the government either creates more money through the Federal Reserve or borrows more money from new investors to pay off the old debt. In essence, they're borrowing money from new investors to pay off the old investors, just like Bernie Madoff. Mm-hmm. In fact, in jail, Bernie Madoff even said the US government is running the biggest Ponzi scheme on earth, and he would know a Ponzi scheme if he sees one.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the only one though. Michael Snyder wrote, "The Fed is the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of the world, and if the American people truly understood how it really works, they would be screaming for it to be abolished immediately."
And here we go. Quote, absolutely it's the biggest Ponzi scheme in the world. But they use Bernie Madoff. So Charles Ponzi was a scapegoat. Madoff was a scapegoat. Mm-hmm. And now that we're transitioning into digital assets and the digital world, they need to keep you scared of that while they transition themselves into the digital world.
And
how do they do that? BitConnect! That guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They do that with BitConnect. They do that with FTX, SBF. And it's like, why is it always the most respected person in the space? Or what they would have you believe was the most respected person in the space? So Bernie Madoff was the face of Wall Street. You know what I mean? Like you had to be upper echelon elite and have an in to get with Bernie. You know what I mean? And it's like, Bernie didn't want your $1 million. It's like, I can't really be bothered with the $1 million. You know what I mean? So, okay, well, let me give you 5, let me give you 10. I went back to my family. We got 10 million now. Right? And so it's like, and then he becomes a scapegoat, and that's why he outs them. So he got leveraged, maybe with threats or money. Okay, you keep going or you go to jail for life. Now he gets until 2008. Cat's out of the bag, financial crisis, housing crisis, the economy crashes, people want their money, it's not there, he's exposed, he's the scapegoat, goes to jail. 150-year sentence they gave him as an example. He died in prison a couple of years ago or whatever. And now, so same thing, SBF, this is pretty much over. But now same thing, SBF after BitConnect, now in the digital world, they want to scare you out. They want to expose frauds like SBF. They're going to bury him, but I guarantee a lot of people made money from SBF's $30 billion.
Oh, for sure. And they got out, right? And then they pull everything out, and then the cards come falling down, and then you see about it, you talk about it in the news and stuff like that. And then everybody runs for the door, and it's too late.
And that's just it. So the house of cards is coming down, and in my opinion, the most secure thing for anybody now is Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And it's don't jump all in, don't put it all in, but it should be your savings account.
Yeah.
now.
I mean, if you're not aware now, it's definitely time to be doing your due diligence and doing your research and checking it out for yourself, because we are going, like we said, through a massive financial transition right now. And if you get left behind,
the beauty,
I don't know what to say. I think it could be
the beauty of the growth that will come to Bitcoin,
bad.
though, is that you wouldn't even have to, even if you have savings. The way that people get fucked in Ponzi schemes is because they bring their life savings to people and trust people with their life savings.
Yeah.
With Bitcoin now, you don't even have to do that.
No.
You could keep your life savings if you feel it's safer in the traditional finance system, and just now start, instead of putting money into that savings, start saving in Bitcoin.
Just start to do your DCA now and leave that other stuff there.
Keep that savings, keep that RSP, keep that mutual fund, keep whatever you got in stocks and bond or whatever it is, and then start now.
And then
allocating some savings
and then reevaluate
Bitcoin.
in 5 years and see how things are going, and you can start to move things around. I'm
almost guarantee you're going to go, fuck, I wish I moved that RSP.
I mean, personally, I took all my money out of the bank years ago, and I only saved money in Bitcoin. But that's just me, and that's not financial advice. But I will tell you that it was one of the better things that I ever did. And my only regret is not buying more Bitcoin. But that's all the time we have for today, guys. So Biggs and Boggs out.
More Bitcoin. DCA and look away.
Wow, yeah, you were leaking.
I leaked, dude. I don't know what it is. Like, should I see a doctor?
I think it's good.